It's the Bill Huston Podcast.
This segment is called DEC Reality Check. This is the DEC Reality Check. I live on donations and grants, and I do public service work full time. I have about $500 of expenses that I can't pay this month. So I really need your help, friends. If you appreciate my work, if you appreciated this video, if you appreciate the research, the deep research that I do, you appreciate these videos that I do and have done, and here's what I've done with my life for the past 10 years. Bill Huston's fracking resume. Just go look that up. You're going to see I've done a lot of stuff, including some local work. I mean, I did a lot of state level work, but I did a lot of local work, including, we fought that speedies permit in Endicott for about 4 years. So Google Bill Huston's fracking resume, and if you can, tinyurl.com/donate to Bill Huston. Donations are appreciated in any amount. So the DEC, it's like permitting and regulating. I did a blog post about the phrase permitting and regulating. It's like they're really, if you look denotatively, if you look very carefully at the words themselves, there's quite a lot of information conveyed there, accurate information. So we are looking for basically prohibitions of, toxic contamination. But the DEC, the regulatory bodies, they're not really set up for that. They're not designed to prohibit things. They're designed to permit and regulate. So you go to the DEC, and there's a guy over here, and there's a guy over here with the two different guys, the two different desks. One guy is the issues the permits, and the other guy is the regulator. You go, hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm stamping permits. That's what I do. I'm a permitter. I stamp permits. That's what I do. How do you know you're working? Well, I'm stamping permits. If I'm working, I'm stamping permits. That's my job, is to stamp the permits. And the regulator, what's the regulator do? The regulator makes sure that the dumping into the river goes on within certain legal parameters under the law. It's not that the dumping stops. It's that the dumping goes on, but it's it's like we have to do it within safe limits. So the DEC doesn't know how to say no. They only really know how to say yes. And once again, I think this is by design. These permits are really a license to pollute. These speedies permits, these air quality permits, they don't stop pollution. They describe the pollution. They reveal it, they disclose it, but it doesn't it doesn't prohibit the pollution. Quite the opposite. It actually enables it. So, once again, a lot of people, I think, are really sort of misled or confused about the nature of the law. We think the law is to prohibit. Like laws against murder. Is murder legal? No, we prohibit it. Well, why do we prohibit murder? Well, because it's discretionary. It violates people's rights, and murder is arbitrary. It's not necessary. You don't need to murder somebody. There's other things you can do. So it's discretionary. It's violent. It always produces an injury. So it's prohibited. What about rape? Yeah, same thing. It's violent. It's unnecessary. It's discretionary. It doesn't need to happen. It produces an injury in every case. So what do? Do we permit it? Do we regulate rape? Do we allow rape? No, we prohibit it. We don't regulate rape. We don't permit rape. We do regulate pollution, and we permit pollution. So I just want you to understand that the way the law is set up here is designed against us. It's designed against us. So ultimately, we have to learn how to undo this very bad system of laws. And we're going to get into this later on. I've got slides on this coming up. I'm going to make clips, each one of these segments. Cumulative impacts are not generally studied. So what does that mean? That means each new, and we're going to get to this up here. No, what does it say up there? No limits. Up there, no limits. That's as close as I can get. No limits. See it up there? No limits. I'm getting explain what this means here, no limits. It's not only no prohibitions, there's actually no limits. It's not limited. The amount of pollution that enters our environment, it's not limited. Wait till you see how bad this is. I'm going to tell you in just a second. We're getting to it, okay? So they take each individual emitter, like there's 2 different sites along the Susquehanna River that I3/
Here on campus.
use to dump things into the Susquehanna River. There's 2 different discharge points. They consider each point, the DEC considers each point as a point source. And the same with a smokestack. The same with something that produces pollution into the air. Each source is a point source. And they say, well, each emitter is legal as long as it's under the acceptable threshold and of it for emissions, right? This is, once again, permitting and regulating as opposed to prohibition. How does permitting and regulating work? Well, there's a little bit of, this cancer-causing benzene that's allowed into the air. There's a little bit of formaldehyde, this cancer-causing formaldehyde that's allowed into the air. There's a little bit. And as long as you don't exceed this little bit, as long as the one single point source doesn't exceed this little bit that they set up, then it's legal. Well, guess what they can do? You can put as many point sources as you like. So as you read these permits, they all argue, they basically say, well, the background toxicity level is this. And then this site is going to basically increase it such a tiny amount that it's not going to make a significant difference. So basically the way the law is set up, it's like if you're already contaminated, any additional contamination, they say it's just so tiny compared to the overall contamination, the background contamination that's already there, that anything goes. Ultimately, it means there are no limits. There are no limits to the maximum amount of these toxic chemicals that can be dumped into the air and dumped into the water. There are no limits. Despite the fact that all these laws are on the books, there are no cumulative impact studies. All of these point sources, every point sourceable is permissible. If it's just a little bit of pollution, what it means is there are no limits. It's shocking. I know people like to believe that the DEC is there working for us, and there probably are people that do work at the DEC that are good people. But the DEC is structurally flawed. Structurally flawed. And this is some of the reasons for why they are.
Now, I imagine a lot of you in this room are like myself and others who have been to the public meetings, who have went to the public comment periods, who have went to our town boards, who have testified here and testified there, who have went to information meetings, who have went to all of those things we do either as activists or citizens to find out about an issue in our community. Pain in the ass, ain't it? Absolute pain. We got to thinking Allegheny County. We watched the process. We saw what was going on. It's no different than buying a car. We want you to buy our car. Click. You need to come into the showroom. Click. You need to sit down with our financial advisor. Click. You need to see that closer. Click. And you're out the door with the car. They make the announcement that the law is there. It's a federal law. The governor can't do anything about it. By the way, the interesting thing about my story is it was Andy's daddy. It was Mario Cuomo. The governor claims nothing I can do. It's a federal law. My hands are tied. It's between the federal government and the communities that are being signed. So we get the announcement. We have the public meeting. They all sit up here on the platform. Way up there. Even built one special for them. So we had to look up. And I don't know whether we were supposed to worship or not, but we did have to look up. One of the gentlemen sat on the panel and through everybody screaming and talking about their children and talking about their farms and talking about how this was going to impact the community, literally folded his hands and went to sleep. and slept through the whole public meeting. So we learned, okay? The politician that stands up and makes his comments, well, we'll review this issue, we'll look at the regulations, we'll do this. You know he's not going to do anything. We've already been through that. The announcement, click. The public hearing, click. Does it make any difference how many people say no? No. If you have 95% of the population saying no and 5% of the population saying yes, if the industry wants it, the yes is going to rule out. Because there's nothing in the regulations that say no. It doesn't. It's just part of the process. Click. Now we're going to have the environmental impact statement. Does it make any difference what the environmental impact statement says? No. No. But you got to have the environmental impact statement. Click. And you just keep through that process until you ultimately get whatever facility it is that they are deciding to site. Why are you picking us? Well, Allegheny County has a railroad. And that railroad goes right by the property that we want to build that dump. That means it's economically feasible for the people of New York. It will minimize the impact of the community. It'll da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Can I see your map? You do realize that this map is from 1964. And the railroad you're talking about hasn't existed for 20-some years. Do they immediately go, oh, well, then we got to go someplace else? No, we'll just build a road. So once the mindset, once the decision's been made, forward they go. We got that. We got that. We're not real bright in my county, but we got that. So we said, you know what? You can plan to build a dump. You can hire the construction company to build a dump. You can get an architect to design the dump. You can stockpile the materials for the dump. But if you can't touch the land, you ain't building a dump. So once the realization of what was happening in our community hit us, a few of us got together and said, let's just say no. It's simple. It saves us from reading all those thousands of emails that we read every day talking about the horror stories from Pennsylvania and other places and everything else. It saves us from doing all of that. It saves us from going and dancing in front of people, giving up our individualism and our humanity to play audience or fool for somebody who probably doesn't even have the same education level that we have, but is just appointed to a position. Why should I give them that? Why should I do that for them? We got that. We got that. So we just simply said, let's stay home. Simple enough. I was home anyway. We looked at where they wanted to go, and we started blockading the roads.